Hi there, welcome to Healing After Infant Loss. Today's video we are talking to Megan, also known as the Miscarriage Mentor on Instagram. In this video we're talking about why she started life coaching and therapy in the first place, why she became a life coach and the difference between being a client and then also being a life coach. She tells us the difference between life coaching and therapy, and also how to decide what is best for you between choosing a life coach or a therapist. She talks to me about her process of being a life coach and how she guides people through the decisions of IVF, trying again, and preparing for pregnancy after loss. We talk about journaling and other modalities that she uses as a life coach. We talk about the importance of boundaries, the main two obstacles that people go through, and some of her best advice. And lastly, Megan shares her hopes of creating a community of women who can all support each other through loss. This is a really wonderful conversation and I really hope you enjoy it. Hi Megan, welcome back to the Healing After Infant Loss YouTube and podcast. Thank you so much for coming back.
Yes, hi Rosie, thank you for having me back.
So you're on a previous episode talking about your experience with infant loss. You had 3 miscarriages and you shared very openly about your experience. So I will be leaving all of that linked below in the description box so people can go ahead and find your previous episode to learn more about you and your story. But today I would love to talk to you about life coaching. So you experienced infant loss between the years of 2015 and 2021, and you started life coaching and therapy in 2019. I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about why you decided to do both life coaching and therapy and what how it helped you with your healing journey.
Yeah, so I first was introduced to life coaching through a podcast, actually. And so I really just started to lean into a lot of what I was learning through those podcasts. And I started to learn so much about how my thoughts were driving my emotions. And from those emotions, I took action. And all of that was really creating my own reality. And so I started to really implement the things that I was learning, and I became basically like my own life coach. I started coaching myself. I started journaling a lot. I've always been someone who leaned into journaling, but throughout different seasons of life, like it would ebb and flow. But life coaching really got me back into journaling. It got me into meditation, and it really overall like reconnected me with a lot of my spirituality. And one of the reasons I went into therapy was because I was dealing with a lot of emotional abuse from my mother-in-law, and I was looking for different ways to cope with that, how to put boundaries in place. And so that's really how and why I got into life coaching and therapy in 2019. And I was also still in the throes of infertility. I hadn't yet found out I was pregnant with my son when I got into therapy, and certainly not when I had found life coaching. So it was for a couple of reasons that I really dug into both of those modalities.
And then in 2021, you became a life coach yourself. How was that transition from going from being, I don't know if you call it a patient in life coaching, I don't know if I'm using the wrong terminology, but how do you go from somebody who's going to somebody else for advice to then becoming the person who's offering the advice and becoming a life coach yourself? How was that transition for you?
Yeah, and so I think it's important to really clear up one of the common misconceptions about life coaching, which is that a life coach is there to give advice. And that's really not my job as a life coach. My job as a life coach is really to hold space for my clients by really listening to what they're saying and reading their body language as to what they might not be saying. Part of that is also to ask really good questions, because my belief as a life coach is that my clients hold the answers to their problems within themselves. They just can't access those answers because of all the stuff that's going on within their brain. So my job is to help them really weed through all the noise and get down to the answers that they're looking for. And I think that distinction makes it easy to transition from being a client of coaching to being the coach, because it really just requires you to create a space of safety for your clients to share, but also creating emotional space between your personal experience and the experience of your clients. Because what our clients don't want is to come to a coach who is not emotionally ready to support them and who finds themselves really being pulled into the emotional turmoil that our clients are bringing to the session. So our job is to really separate ourselves a tiny bit emotionally so that way we can come to the session free of our own agenda and really support our clients in the way that they need us to support them and show up for them.
So then what's the differences between life coaching and therapy? Because I did a tiny bit of therapy a couple of times and didn't have a great experience. So I probably need to find the right therapist. I would love to someday. So what's the difference between life coaching and therapy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get this question all the time. And I also will say, in my 6 years of being in therapy, I have gone through probably 4 different therapists. So it definitely takes a while to find really that right person. And for me, when I think about the differences between therapy and life coaching, some of the key differentiators is that therapy will really dig into the emotions, why those emotions are showing up and where they're coming from. It is often focused more so past tense. How did our upbringing, how did our familial relations form all of these thoughts, right? What are those tied to historically? Whereas life coaching, we really take an approach from present moment forward. And we look at where are you today and where do you want to go? And one of the things I personally love most about life coaching, in contrast to therapy, is the action oriented focus. So within therapy, I found that sometimes I would go to my therapist, feel like I just had a bitch session, and then leave without really finding much resolution or solution. And so with life coaching, there is certainly that ability to vent. But what we do is we really think about, okay, well, what action steps do you need to take in order to get to your goal? Because with therapy, you can be in therapy for the rest of your life. And for some people that works, but with other people, they really want to see movement toward an actual goal. They want to see movement toward changed behavior, changed thoughts. And that's where life coaching really comes in to play, because we're thinking about the future and really collaborating on what those action steps look like based on each specific client and their unique needs.
So then how can somebody decide which one to go for in terms of life coaching or therapy? Is it kind of a personal decision on if they want to not dwell on the past, but I guess talk about childhood and things like that, and how, because I'm trying to think in terms of infant loss. With therapy, I guess it might go back to how you brought up, your relationship with your own mother, society and that kind of thing, whereas with life coaching it might be more about mindset and action plans. So is that like a personal choice between the two, or is there a way for somebody to decide which one might be best, or just try them, or what do you kind of recommend for people not sure which way to go?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Rosie. Thank you for asking. And so first, it really does come down to personal preference. One of the things I will say is if somebody feels like they are experiencing a true mental health crisis, then therapy would probably be the best route for them, because in life coaching, we do not diagnose. We don't diagnose any kind of condition, point blank, period. We are not here as medical professionals. We're really here as a coach and a guide. I like to think of myself more of like a Sherpa, individuals who are looking to climb Mount Everest. They're not exactly sure what equipment to bring, how to pack, what to do, how to really chart out their trip, right? When should I take a break? When should I be setting up camp? How many miles should I be hiking a day? And the Sherpa is there to really help guide those individuals on their journey, help them to foresee potential challenges and roadblocks, and help them to overcome them when they reach those. And so I like to think of a life coach more like a Sherpa. And I'm not sure which analogy I would use for a therapist in that specific example, but yeah, I would say 1, it comes down to personal preference. And 2, if the individual is truly feeling like they are experiencing a mental health crisis, then therapy might be a better route for them.
I love that analogy. That made so much sense when you said that. It was about the equipment, about the weather, about the hike, about the route and things like that. So with your life coaching clients, do you also talk about things, like, is IVF an option? Do we try again? Like, do I try this medication? Or do you really go in the depths of actual details in terms of planning and moving forward after a miscarriage, if somebody even wants to try again? Because I know a lot of times it's heartbreaking, you don't want to do it for 2 years, and then you come back to it. And so you really get like in there with the questions and help them figure out what's best for them without you diagnosing and giving instructions, because obviously you're not a doctor. It's not like is that kind of the way it goes?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I had a client that was looking to explore potential IVF or other fertility treatments, or even one of the biggest things that I talk to my clients about is preparing them for pregnancy again. And so what we would do is really dig into what they feel is the best choice for them. Because at the end of the day, they could go to 5 different people with the same question and get 5 different answers. And the only answer that's going to feel right for them is the one that they come up with themselves. And so it's my job to really help them figure out the best decision for them and understand what are some of those fears holding them back. And one of the things I really love this particularly about life coaching and when it comes to mindset is that we get the choice to believe different thoughts. We can believe that because we had one loss, we will have another, and that pregnancy will be hard for us. We can choose to believe that. And we can choose to take on all of the emotional anguish and stress that comes with those thoughts. Or we could choose to believe that, yes, loss has happened to us before. It could likely happen again, but that's not guaranteed either. We have a choice to believe different thoughts. And so I love to really challenge my clients on which thought they want to continue believing, because at the end of the day, it's those thoughts that create our emotions. From those emotions, we take action, and it's those actions that create the reality we live in. And so backing it all up to what is that thought, and do you like that thought? Do you want to keep thinking that thought is life-changing.
Yeah, I guess that's also where journaling comes in as well, because I think you mentioned in the previous episode that journaling really helped you in terms of writing down, like, do I deserve to be a mother? And, all these kind of questions that you had when you were experiencing infertility and, miscarriages and things. So do you encourage journaling within your life coaching, and do you have specific prompts that you recommend? And is that part of your process as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I do encourage all of my clients to journal. There will be different exercises that I'll take my clients through and different prompts that I'll offer them just based on what they're telling me and what I'm hearing in session, and really where I think they might be emotionally and mentally on their fertility journey. Within the program, I mean, they also have access to meditations. They receive customized nutritional and exercise guidelines. We talk about forming boundaries too, because a lot of times people we love can say the wrong thing. I think we've talked about this in our last session too. Like, people we love, they're well intended, but they say just shit things sometimes. And another thing that I know my clients deal with, and this is something I experienced myself with my own sister, is when I was going through my loss and my infertility challenges, my sister was getting pregnant. And her joy triggered my grief. And it became very difficult to stay in relation to her during that period of time. And it became difficult to stay in relation to my parents during that time and other friends that were experiencing joy. And so we also work a lot on boundaries, because we know that miscarriage, infant loss is so isolating as it is. And to sever your support system because you're at different points in your journey, or they say something that they might not mean to be hurtful but truly is, can just add fuel to the fire. And so by helping my clients stay in relation to those they love helps the healing process just so much more. And it really allows them to create a wider network of support themselves, so that way, should this happen again, they know that their support system is as well resourced and equipped as they are.
Boundaries is one of those things I wish I learned earlier, because honestly, going to just friends finding out they're pregnant, or going to events like baby showers, or seeing certain people who are going to be pregnant and they're X amount of months or whatever it is, it's so tough, so tough. I wish I'd learned boundaries earlier. It's one of those things that nobody really talks about. Well, they didn't talk about when I was going through it anyway. It's been a couple of years now since I went through all that. But honestly, I wish that I had learnt about boundaries, and also then had the strength to be actually, I don't want to see you today. I'm having a tough day. Or actually, I don't want to go to that thing because I know that person's going to be there and she's pregnant and I can't do that right now. That is one of the main things I wish I'd known from back when I was going through all this, because it's it's really tough. It's really tough to like keep composed and like stay calm. And like, I think I said, well, I don't know if it was in our last episode or another video I filmed recently, but like when I see a particular friend, whenever I see her son, I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Like for like 2 hours that I see them, because I'm just always so hurt. But it's one of those where like, had I known at the time, I would have avoided so many more triggers and occasions and things. So yeah, boundaries is key.
Yes, yes. I mean, I wish the same thing. Like, I remember in 2015, after my first miscarriage, one of my cousins was pregnant at the same time. And we were both supposed to be due like mid-September. She did have her son. And I remember sitting at her baby shower, because I also didn't know that boundaries were a thing, that I was allowed to say no. I didn't know that at that time. And I remember sitting at a table full of pregnant women. I mean, I think 80% of the people at my table were pregnant. So the whole conversation was just around names and delivery stories and nannies or daycare or, and I just remember for hours sitting there choking back tears, just wanting to cry and scream. Like I look back on that moment and I give that version of myself a hug and so much love, and let her know that like she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to sit there and put herself through that pain. And if I can help other women know that they also have the freedom to say no and be able to do it in a loving way is so helpful.
So if you're watching this and you're currently in this position, you can say no to that event, that thing. You don't have to go. You're not a bad person. Say no. Look after yourself and your own peace, and don't do the things you don't want to do if it feels wrong. And also, if you go, you can leave early. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Look after yourself.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the main obstacle that your clients go through, if there's anything in particular that most people struggle with in terms of miscarriage and then potentially want to try again or not, whatever it is? Is there like a main obstacle that most people go through that you're seeing over and over again?
With my clients that do want to conceive again after loss, it is the fear. They tell me that they are just absolutely terrified to try again. And in that terror, they are, questioning, like kind of what we talked about in the last video. Am I even worthy of being a mom? Can I do this? Should I do this? And so that is certainly one of them. And then the other thing that I see just across the board is that women, their internal narrative flips like so quickly after a miscarriage, where they go to blaming themselves, potentially blaming their partner in some cases. It's almost like a disassociation is almost like the best way that I can explain it. And I am putting myself back into that scenario also, like right after my losses, specifically my first. It's like such a disassociation. There is guilt, there's confusion, there's denial. There are so many and even potentially conflicting emotions, especially when you're looking to conceive, the excitement, but then the fear. And so it's really diving into all of that.
So if anybody watching is going through either of those two cases, what's your best piece of advice or your best tip to overcome those obstacles that they might be facing right now?
If they are in the scenario of really blaming themselves or their partner, and I would first say that it's nobody's fault, and you are not to blame. I would tell them that they are 100% worthy, regardless of whether or not they end up having children. They're worthy, regardless. For those that are looking to conceive and are really scared, I would say, and this is where sometimes spirituality can come into play. We can't control everything. Conception is unfortunately something that we really can't control. As much as we like to think we are in control of our bodies, there are just certain things that we can't control. And one of the phrases that I like to use, although I'm not a particularly religious person, is give it to God, give it to universe, give it to spirit. There is an exercise that I love taking my clients through, and it's to take just a piece of simple notebook paper and draw a line down the middle of it. On one side, this is me, all of the things that you have control over and that you can take care of today. And then on the other side, you can use whatever word you would use for God or the universe or spirit or angels. And in that column, you list everything that's outside of your control that is still causing you worry. And you're telling the universe or God or your angels or whatever phrase is most authentic to you that there are things that you are worried about that are heavy on your heart that you cannot control. And you're asking for their guidance and their support to help lighten that load. To come take everything in their column on that piece of paper, take all of that off of my plate for me today. And today, what I will focus on is everything that's in my control. And I love taking my clients through that exercise and going through it myself also when I'm in just times of uncertainty or doubt, because it really drives home the idea that we don't control everything. And that can offer a bit of solace and peace when you are going through something as challenging as infertility and infant loss.
I've never heard that exercise. Completely forgot my word. I've never heard of that exercise before, but it sounds amazing because, like you said, you can often worry about things that really are not in your control. Like, you can't control the weather outside, so you can't control like so much about infertility, miscarriage, all these different things that happen. Like, you really have no control, yet you sit there and spend 90% of your day worrying about this thing that you have no control over. So I think that is genius. I've never heard that one before. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Right. And then sitting in all of that anxiety actually produces hormones within our body, right? Like, our thoughts trigger an emotional reaction within us. And so if we're sitting there thinking about stress, our body is pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, and all of those hormones can impact your ability to conceive and conceive in a healthy way. And so it's a little bit more helpful than telling people to relax.
Yeah. That old chestnut. Just relax, go on holiday, drink some alcohol, you'll be fine, you'll get pregnant. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Super helpful.
Right.
So you talked about journaling and meditation. Are there any other modalities that you like to work with, such as yoga or anything else to help people along with their journeys?
Yeah, so I offer customized nutritional and exercise guidelines because food is medicine, and so is movement. Movement can really help you to process stuck emotions. There's a book; it's very thick. Well, not super thick, but this book has been really helpful for me. The Body Keeps the Score. And Bessel van der Kolk, he is a doctor, and what he talks about is how our physical body stores emotional trauma in different ways. And so every time I talk to a woman who has had a loss, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, when the time of year comes around that you either found out you were pregnant or you went through the loss, it's almost like your body just knows. And through movement, you're able to start releasing some of those stuck emotions. So I love to use exercise, and I call it joyful movement because not the last thing somebody wants to do, especially when they're going through a loss, is like do something they fucking hate. So I help them to find movement that also, depending on what stage of their loss they're in, can help support the healing of their physical body and also help to release some of that trauma. So yes, those are some of the other modalities that I lean into.
Amazing. Is there anything else you want to talk to us about in terms of life coaching, in terms of your business? Is there anything else we haven't sort of mentioned that you want to talk about now?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess the only other thing that I would say is I am also really looking to build out a community of women where they can connect with one another, because we know how isolating and lonely miscarriage and infertility can be. And it's not something that we necessarily feel eager to talk about, especially with those who might not be going through that themselves. And so my hope is that I can create a community where women can connect with one another. They can access all of these resources and really find healing through community. So that is a little bit of a future vision of mine. So,
yeah, I love that. I think it's so important. I think that's, again, one of those things that throughout my whole journey, I never found that. I never even looked for it. I never knew that was a thing to look for. And then it's only now, like, I think 4.5 years since my last miscarriage, I now feel at a place where I can talk about shit. I can talk about miscarriage, abortion, all these sort of things that happened. But at the time, I never even thought that would be beneficial, and like it didn't even cross my mind. But now I'm like, oh my god, women need other women to talk about this shit with. You need people who understand, who can relate, who aren't going to say stupid shit to you, who like honestly are like rooting for you whichever way you decide to go. And I think it's so important to find women to do that with when you're ready as well, because it took me years to get to it now where I'm like, okay, I could do with talking to other people about this. So yeah, so important.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I felt a lot the same way too, which is why I wanted to get into this line of work, right? I mean, I feel like my doctors, at least, were like, okay, well, come back to us when you're pregnant. No big deal. You know, this happens all the time. And so it made me feel like I was blowing, you know, my experiences out of proportion a little bit and overreacting to them. When in reality, what we experience through infant loss is a death within our living body. That's traumatic. And so, yeah, I think that resources and outlets are 100% necessary because we know that miscarriage, abortion, pregnant loss, that it happens so commonly, so commonly. Yeah, and we need each other more.
And I think oftentimes as well, we don't know the people at that exact time who are going through it. Like maybe your other friends are getting pregnant easily and just, you know, flying through it, but actually maybe they've done IVF behind the scenes, or maybe this has happened or that has happened. Like, I don't think people are always as upfront and honest about their fertility journey. Just suddenly someone's pregnant and you're not, and it can feel a certain way. But then if we're more open about it, I think you'd know that more people that you realize are actually going through the same shit. And like, the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it and share our experiences, the more hopefully other people will feel more comfortable to share their experiences with their friends and connect and like, yeah, find other people that are going through something similar. Because if you're the only one in your friend group going through that and everybody else is getting pregnant, it feels really shitty. So yeah, community is super important.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for recording this podcast episode. I really enjoyed it. I learned so much, especially the differences between therapy and life coaching. I didn't really know. So thank you so much for recording this podcast episode with me today.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe for more videos, and I hope to see you soon. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and make sure you check out the website with lots of advice, blog posts, and information. Bye!